Welcome back to another episode. I have been super reluctant because this topic has been one that I have resisted for many, many years talking about because I think there is a lot of misunderstanding about trends. And if you have a pit in your stomach and you cringe when you hear the word trends, this is exactly why I have not wanted to talk about trends related to the art industry for years, because I think a lot of artists think about trendy stuff and think about the phrase following trends, and they think that that is what I'm talking about. But in this episode, I am going to cut to the chase because when I hear the word follow trends, I just cringe. I want to roll up in a ball and I am not interested, because if you put the word follow with trends, you'll understand the misunderstanding. We are going to talk in this episode about the distinction and difference between creating trends and predicting trends. And there is a really big difference. So stay with me on this episode as we get into the heart of it, which I'm really excited to share, but I'm also aware that this might ruffle a few feathers. It might feel like I'm ripping a Band-Aid off, because I'm being really honest and really frank. So let's get into the episode right now. And today I want to talk about trends. And the way I'm going to talk about it is probably not the way that you commonly think of the word trends. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and ideas on how trends are used. So if you find yourself kind of cringing inside when you hear the word trends because you're an artist and you're an authentic artist, bear with me. I'm going to dismantle some of this for you so that you can be aware of how trends are impacting you as an artist and how to use them to your advantage in a way that is really authentic to you and in a way that allows you to be in front of them and not behind them. Because whether we like it or not, we're in them as a consumer and as an artist. So if you're interested in learning more about this and really dismantling trends, stay with me till the very end, because I'm going to give you my recommendations on what to do in this current climate. And I've had a lot of artists ask me about this. So I want to talk about the definition of trends. Now, I think a lot of people automatically have a definition. So I want to really recap based on my experience what I'm referring to when I talk about trends, because I do get a pit in my stomach when I think about what most people think about trends, but I'm going to really dismantle this for you because the way I think about it is very different. And this comes from my background in trends and really coming at it from a trend researcher, color forecaster, but it really is the difference between following and creating and predicting. So on a big macro level, really trends and the definition of trends refers to a general direction in which something is developing or changing, often driven by growing awareness and demand. And that is kind of like big picture idea of what trends really are. And at a big macro level, this is based on changes in culture, social, political, and economic factors. And there's a lot of variables within that. And there is a demand from people to change. It's not static, it's always flowing, and it is not what you think. So I'm going to be talking today about the difference between following trends, and by definition, that really means being a follower and not leading, which is why we get a pit in our stomach as artists when we think, following trends. Who wants to do that? Exactly. That's what I'm going to talk about today, because I'm going to talk about the difference between following trends and the difference between predicting and creating trends. And by definition, creating is not following. It is predicting and creating. And I think there's a misconception that trends is all about following the trends and being trendy. And it really makes me cringe, and it might make you cringe when you think about it. And this is why I have avoided talking about this for years, because I know there is a lot of education that I want to do to help people understand, particularly artists. I want to help artists understand the best way to use them so that you are not caught behind the trends and you're really being authentic to yourself. Because every time we hear the word trend, we as a culture automatically go into this wrong definition and meaning, and it's really not the whole picture. It's actually a really, really narrow picture, and it's not really the ideal picture of how to use trends effectively as an artist. And if we want to be authentic, we want to be innovative, and we want to be a true artist, being a follower and following trends is not really being a true artist. It is simply being a follower. An artist creates and an artist predicts trends. And this is the best place to be in the trend buckets. And I want to walk you through what that looks like. And the reason why I've been reluctant, because I really want to give you the bigger picture. I think your interpretation of trends might have been very narrow, meaning you think of the word trendy, and I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I want to explain the bigger buckets of trends and what happens with those. If you're on YouTube, you can see there are different segments of markets that react differently to trends. And the hardest trend buckets to work with, they don't actually buy art. I know. Big, annoying shocker. But the good news is you don't have to work with them. So if you're working with them, you will definitely find it difficult to sell your art. And the goal is to find people who value the creation, the new, and the creative nature of the artist. So I want to help you, for those of you who are not on YouTube watching this graph in this video, I want you to be able to draw a trend bucket segment. I want you to grab a piece of paper and I want you to create 4 columns. So you're basically drawing 4 different lines and you will have 4 buckets, so to speak. So the 4 columns are the buckets. And on the very left side, far left, I want you to write at the bottom of that column, laggard and little to no change. Basically, this person is a slow poke. They are not going to usually even adopt trends. There is little to no change. And then on the far right, I want you to write in that far column, early adopter. And they are the most open to change, but they will not be a follower. And this is the clear distinction I want to make today. And it's important to know who is open to change, because as an artist who wants to be authentic, you are an explorer by nature. That is in your natural state of being an artist. And repeating yourself like a factory probably won't fulfill you as an artist. And I think the reality is we really have to work with people who are open to change. And when we look at the farthest left, again, they are not really even following the trends. There is little to no change. There's not much movement, meaning they don't really like a lot of change. Not so great for an ideal artist who wants to be really free and creative. On the far right, you have people who are interested in contemporary art. They are the early adopters, and they're really open to change, but they don't want to be a follower. And so they are going to resonate with people who are predicting and creating the trends. And this is really important because in order to do this, you have to know where the market is headed. You have to be culturally relevant and you have to be able to see the future. And by following trends, you are not seeing the future. You are seeing what already has happened. And I think that this is a really important distinction because in the middle columns, I've had you write on the far left and I've had you write down on the far right. But in the middle, you have following trends as buckets, and they're not predicting trends. They are literally following them. So when you hear the word following trends, this is the bucket that you're referring to. And this is not the most ideal bucket. It is really hard because it tends to be short-lived. It tends to be super crowded, and it doesn't really allow you a lot of freedom to be yourself. You will be really caught up in conforming to watching what other people are already doing and following. It's that simple. So when you hear the word follow trends, I want you to know like there is a really big distinction. There is a big distinction between following trends and predicting trends. And we're going to talk about what you need to do instead of following trends, because I'm such a big believer in this. And in all the years of color forecasting and trend forecasting and all that research that I've done in my own career, this is the thing that will set you apart. This is also the thing that will keep you ahead and be really interested in your work as a authentic artist as well. I mean, let's be real. What artist out there really wants to just follow what everyone else has already done? I got to be really honest. It gives me such a cringe in my stomach when I think of this. So what you need to do instead is learn how to create and predict trends. That is really, really important. And every market has the potential for this. It takes more bravery. It takes more uniqueness, and it takes more revealing of your authentic self. But this is where the biggest rewards are as an artist. And this will allow you to be unique, not follow the trends, but actually be relevant for those cultural shifts that are already happening. And this is based on knowing cultural consumer trends, the way the world is going as a society. It is moving. It is moving very fast. And it moves because things happen, things change, and dynamics change. It is not superficial, trendy, cheap stuff that doesn't really matter. These are actually really, really important things. In fact, why it's so important now more than ever is because in difficult economic times, the trendy stuff, the stuff that I'm going to call a little more fluff, following trends people, they don't have a lot of disposable income. Trends are also connected to demographics and buying power, and it is a lot harder to sell trendy art because their disposable income tends to get wiped out during this time. So if you find yourself stuck in following trends, feeling like you're not really selling or being cultural relevant, I'm sorry. I feel like sometimes this podcast is definitely going to be ripping off a Band-Aid. And I've really hesitated to talk about because I know there's a lot of artists out there that are feeling like they're in the follow the trends group of people. It's really, really difficult because it doesn't always work to do this. For starters, I think it's very difficult because you can't really truly be yourself. You are limited to following, meaning you've got to fit into a box a little bit more. I think you also are much more limited on how much you can charge for your art and what people are willing to pay for it when you're following the trends. And it's also really difficult because there is a lot of artists that do this. And so the competition can be fierce. And usually people who are buying trendy art are price shopping. They're looking for the look. They're looking for the trend, and they will buy the lowest price as opposed to being loyal to a unique artist because they're looking for the look, not the artist. So cultural shifts drive trends. Full stop. That is the thing you need to know most. Cultural shifts drive the beginning of trends. Again, not the following of the trends, but they drive them forward. And in Origin Art, I just released recently over the last month the 8 big macro consumer trends happening globally based on cultural shifts of the world. And this is post-lockdown world, meaning we have had shifts happen for many different reasons. These are not little trendy fad shifts. These are cultural relevant shifts. And most artists authentically resonate with at least one of these, and most likely 2 to 3 of these. And how we each interpret that through the lens of our unique voice, that is actually going to create trends. It's not following them, it's creating them. Those are the ones that lead the crowd. And this impacts the beautiful nuances that we each bring to our art and shine uniquely. And when we do this, when we lead and create trends, we're going somewhere new. And this is the most valuable art collectors who don't want to feel like a follower. They want to feel unique and special. I want to say that again because I do not want this to go missed. The ideal best collectors, they don't want to feel like followers. News alert. They do not want to feel like followers. And if you find yourself resisting being a follower and following trends yourself, this is a clue that you have something super unique. You have a unique perspective, and your ideal people do not want to follow trends as well. And these are the best collectors because they really appreciate artists who create the new way of the future. And these are also the best collectors who get matched with the best artists. So as an artist, you really are rewarded for seeing the new, for seeing the future. And this also allows you to have the truest expression of yourself and be rewarded for it too. And if you find yourself caught in a trend cycle that you don't like, you can make progress to shift and move because nothing is static. I've been caught in a trend cycle and I was like, I'm not feeling this. I'm not liking it. And I really had to put my head down and get to work and move forward. And I'm still doing that because unfortunately or fortunately, when you are leading the edge, you have to keep staying on top and leading the edge. In other words, you've got to go somewhere new as an artist. And again, the people who are following you and buying your artwork, they're looking for that from you anyway. Otherwise, you will lose interest and you won't be relevant. I want you to think of Apple buyers and people who love to buy Apple products, for instance. Apple buyers are super loyal. I'm definitely a super avid Apple buyer. I've been buying Apple for as long as I can remember, a very, very long time. I think I was one of their early adopters years ago when the computer was so slow it could barely do anything. And so think of Apple buyers. They love the new phones. They're always looking for the new. They're looking for the latest technology. They're looking for whatever latest thing is. And Apple has been innovative. They created the iPhone, they created the iPad, and other things. And I know they're working on other technology as we speak. So even though they've innovated and people have followed what they're doing, they're still innovating and creating something new. And the people who are loyal to them, they love watching what they're doing next and they are supporting them. And those Apple buyers are not interested in buying the $20 flip phone from the discount store. They value innovation and they value the new. And if you think of the person who does buy the $20 flip phone, they probably don't really care about the latest things and seeing the new. That demographic that's looking for something that's new and exciting. And that's why early adopters tend to be associated with contemporary art, because contemporary art and the art that's on the most contemporary cutting edge is the new. And as artists, we are rewarded for going where we haven't gone before. And that is what Apple does as well. And I want you to also think of a river that flows downward, because streams that flow downward are not static. Trends are like a stream floating downriver, constantly moving. It isn't static. There is no, I've discovered my thing and therefore I'm done and it's a set and forget. It's always moving. What once was leading edge and contemporary, it gets adopted and it becomes mainstream and then it becomes trendy. And once that hits, it drops off and it becomes irrelevant. And to be truthful, from my perspective, when I see something becoming mainstream and being adopted, for me, it's over. It's done. I'm not really interested in it as an artist anymore, and it's time to move on. And I really will become irrelevant as an artist, as well as I'm not as interested in it. So we always want to see how we can do something new. And when you think of a downward stream, imagine this windy river. Imagine if you set up camp over in another area and you're not on the stream that's moving. You've got to move forward. Otherwise, you're literally missing the moving current or you're caught behind the current. So because the people who are not open to art and new ideas don't really change much, or they don't really have the capacity to change much, it's really difficult to work with these kind of people because they're not really open to change, and it's a much harder challenge as an artist. And I wish I didn't have to say this, and I know some of you are like, wait, I'm working in a really conservative market. Now, There are some things I have to say about that separately if you are in a conservative market. So don't worry, you can still be new in that market, but you do need to be aware of how the lever works and how far you can go, and really questioning, where do you want to go as an artist? What really would make your soul happy? And if you're only interested in selling and you don't really want to be inspired at a deeper level, it's going to get really hard. And I'm just saying that like full honesty. You've got to really connect to your art to really push it forward, and the market eventually will demand it. And that's why you see trendy stuff become a fad, because it happens really quickly and then it drops off because the laggards aren't really interested in it. Laggards meaning slowpokes. They're not really that interested in it. It drops off. So when you see something come up, it can become a fad and then it quickly drops off. You definitely don't want to get caught up in that, because that is a super short-lived thing and you'll be chasing your tail all the time. So my recommendation is to move up the scale and work in the ideal situation. And the ideal situation as an artist is not to follow trends. It's to create and predict trends. Don't follow them. Following trends is a really tough gig. It's exhausting. You can't really be yourself. You're probably going to look like a copycat at some level. Full honesty. Again, I feel like there's a Band-Aid I'm ripping off. And you always have to put your work on sale, because this crowd is very crowded. It's very competitive, and the lowest price usually wins. So if you find yourself always having to put your stuff on sale, you're always finding that you're following the trends, it's a tough gig. And if you feel that it's tough, there is a reason for that. The best way I know how to survive all this is to really get in front of trends and create them. And that is very different from following them. And my question to you is, isn't that the authentic artist spirit anyway? I mean, don't we all want to create the new? Don't we want to get in front of things? It doesn't feel that good to be a follower and just to be a production artist. Now, if you're listening to this and you really do want to be a production artist and really repeat the same thing or follow the trends or have someone else tell you how to be an artist, this podcast probably isn't for you. I hate to say this, but I'm going to say things that I have not said for a long time. And the reason why I am saying it now is because for a long time, I did not know how to say this without probably offending a lot of people in the industry. And this is no disrespect to anyone doing this. I just find that what I'm telling you, some of these other ways are harder. They're just harder. And they're not as fulfilling as an artist. So if you're looking for that authentic, free spirit artist spirit and be rewarded for that, like truly rewarded by being authentic, having a really good time in the studio, going somewhere new, creating something new, you've got to get in front of the trends. You've got to actually learn how to create them and predict them, because you are on the edge. I really think as a culture, people really expect artists to be on the edge. We are different for a reason. We are creative for a reason. We are innovative for a reason. We have ideas for a reason. It is not necessarily just to be the hands of someone else's ideas. I think the best way to be an artist, the most fun way to be an artist, and the most fulfilling position as an artist, because your collectors reward you, is to be at that far end of the spectrum. That far end of the spectrum where you are creating things that are new and never been seen before. You are predicting where the future's going. You're living part of one of those cultural shifts anyway, so you might as well capitalize on it and really bring something new to the market. And in the meanwhile, have a really good time as an artist. And when you get that combination, you also get to raise your prices, because the people who want that unique perspective, who want the newest, latest thing, they're willing to pay more. Look at Apple. Look at the pricing for Apple versus the cheap flip phone. I mean, the amount of money we pay for Apple products and an iPhone is crazy. And yet I don't hesitate every single time. So the people who want new and to see the future, to experience the future, to go into the future with you because you are an artist and you are showing them the direction. If that's you, you really have to own it and don't feel like you have to follow trends. If I hear any other artists think that I'm saying following trends, please send them to this episode, because this is the one reason I have hesitated for so long to share my thoughts on trends, because it is a can of worms. I do appreciate everyone asking about trends and understanding more about where I'm coming from in this perspective. And I will come out with more episodes around trends specifically, because it's really valuable when you understand the power of them, but you understand them in a way that's really authentic to you, in a way that actually is moving with the current, and you're not behind the current feeling like a follower and really getting that icky feeling in your stomach when you hear the word trends. So let's reinvent the word trends, shall we, as a community? I would really appreciate that. I think we have a lot of work to do in this area. So one last note I want to say about my recommendations. With all that I've said, this episode may have ruffled some feathers. I'm going to be honest, I hesitated for a long time because I did not want to ruffle the feathers. I didn't want to stir the pot, so to speak, but I hope this has definitely shed some light on some things for you. And if you're feeling like you're in a really tough spot with trends at the moment and you feel like you're on the backside of them, definitely DM me and let me know what you think. I would love to hear how I can help you and give you some recommendations that might impact how you make your work, what next steps can be. What I do in Origin Art is help artists do this at a very personal, in the weeds level. I love to do that. If you're interested in applying all of these ideas I've been talking about into your art and evolving your art and identifying who you are selling to and what your art is doing for them through consumer buying trends, definitely join the Origin Art waitlist in the show notes, where I spend a lot of time behind the scenes helping artists really dig into their most authentic work. We do look at trends, but we're looking at it from a creating and predicting, knowing what the cultural shifts are rather than following the trends. So you will not hear me say, follow these trends. It will not come out of my mouth, because you don't need me for that. But if you want help creating and predicting trends based on where your art lives in the art market, that is where I can help you. So join the Origin Art waitlist, which is in the show notes if you want help with that. So that's a wrap for today. Stay tuned for more episodes. And if you enjoyed this episode, I hope it shed some light. And even if it made you aware of things that made you really uncomfortable, I do hope you will stay with me on the next episodes as I share more. So DM me on Instagram. I would love to hear what you thought about this episode. And of course, if you want to share this episode with other artists that you think it would resonate with, that would be amazing. And I appreciate all the sharing that is going on. And I love seeing your questions come in. Your questions really drive the topics that I talk about on the podcast. I have had a lot of questions about trends and what it means to us as artists, and especially artists who want to make their most authentic work and really be true to who they are and not follow the trends. And if you're on YouTube, watch this next, because I think you're going to like it.